Welcome you back to the Patrick Netherton Show right here on 1130 The Tiger. The man, the myth, the legend, Fox Sports own, and Grand Marshal, Grand Poobah, Timmy B, Tim Brando, Fox Sports joins us. Timmy, what's up, my friend?
Yes, just don't call me the Grand Wizard, okay? Just don't call me that.
It's definitely the wrong thing to say, Timmy.
That's right.
I would not do that. Look, we had
Rogers might, but you don't need to do that.
Yeah, no,
okay?
Rogers, I would not do that.
He could get away with it. He could get away with it after about 5 Budweisers.
Yeah, I told Amy Trask, the former, Al Davis's right-hand lady with the Oakland Raiders, she was the Princess of Darkness.
Right.
For the Raiders. Yeah. I had her on the show, and I called her the Mistress of Darkness, and she's like, nope, can't have that. That's a completely different person. I'm the Princess of Darkness, not the Mistress of Darkness.
Princess, yes, there is a difference.
Yeah.
Right.
Timmy, how the heck are you, my friend?
I'm good. I missed a couple of basketball games to be the Mardi Gras Grand Marshal at the Krewe of Centaur, and I got to tell you, it was awesome. It was well worth it, and I appreciate Fox. They had plenty of time to get used to the idea and settle in on allowing me to do it, because I was able to call them back during last spring about it initially, and then in the fall they okayed it. And in past years I had never even been, Patrick, to a Mardi Gras parade here. Now my daughters had, Terry had taken them over there to the duck pond many times when they were in school, and enjoyed it. But I was always gone. I was always at a basketball game. So, and never really thought much about being part of it at all. And then, lo and behold, God bless Fair Park High School and its magnificent tradition. We had our 50th high school reunion last May.
Yeah.
And a couple of guys that I grew up with, Chuck Rinchuso, who lived over on Hassett Street, Rinchuso's Plumbing. I'm sure you've heard of him. I'm sorry if Bobby O'Green gets upset with you, but he went to school with me, and so did Harvey Dillahunty. And they both inquired that night at our reunion about my interest. And I said, you know what? I just kind of looked at Terry was with me, and I looked at her and I said, we're not getting any younger here. I mean, this would be fun, I think. And while we both are healthy and our kids are young and close by, not many parents that have kids and grandkids have them close by. So I thought this could be a great family couple of weekends. We got off the weekend of the ball, which was on the 8th, and last weekend, the 22nd, and we had a fantastic time. I mean, and Patrick, more than anything else, it just renewed my vigor and my enthusiasm about the decision we made long ago about moving home. Just a little reminder. Stuff like that happens, whether it's, first you think about the Independence Bowl, the people you see at that, and then you think about maybe playing in the City Am, which we all did years ago. You, me, Fletch, all of us played.
Yep.
And the new people that we met when we went out to the Bees and played out there, maybe even Huntington if you played in the City Am, and people maybe that you hadn't seen in a long time, or made new friends.
Yeah.
So with people that have lived here for a long time, some that maybe didn't even know that I lived here, okay, that were like, oh, I had no idea you lived here until you were part of this. And I'm like, how long have you been part of the Krewe of Centaur? Oh, man, for 20-some years, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Saw Larry Ryan. And Larry, of course, was and is the king of radio in Shreveport Bossier, still at it, doing morning on the oldie station.
Lovable Larry Ryan.
I hadn't seen Larry in probably at least shortly after I moved back. He and Al LeGrand are dear friends, and Blue and I played some golf from time to time, but I had not seen Larry since probably the first 4 or 5 years that we moved back. So, that would still be 30 years ago. We moved back in 90, and they didn't start this thing. That was the other thing. I remember with the Mardi Gras parades, when I first heard about them after we moved back from Connecticut, we didn't grow up with that. They didn't start that till the 89, 90 year. Well, that was right about the time we were moving back home and building our home out here at Trace, and so that was all new at the time, and now they've got it down to a science. I mean, It's big time, and I don't remember having as much fun for two weekends out of 3 in my hometown ever as I did with this. It was just a blast. And
Yeah.
I want to thank Ricky Bridges. I want to thank David Taylor, who was our lieutenant. These people just went out of their way to accommodate us in every way imaginable, and it just was a lot of fun. And God graced us with some unbelievable weather after the cold snap that we had right before Saturday.
Yeah,
so,
no doubt. By the way,
and all the rain we had too.
Our boy Greg Adams here at the station, he is very big in that crew as well. So, I heard through the grapevine that you had a special jacket. Is this? Am I understanding this correctly?
I did. The people at the Mardi Gras and Tiffany went to work on it. It looks like a letter jacket for a guy that couldn't make up his mind between LSU and Tulane.
Yeah, okay. I mean,
it's purple, it's gold, it's green.
I mean, Timmy, in today's day and age of college athletics, it might be a guy that played at both Tulane and LSU. You know, I mean,
right.
that makes sense.
Good point. Yeah, we definitely wanted to be festive, and with everything that they do, we didn't do. People were asking me, "Oh, do you have specialty beads?" And I'm like, No, but I got some good cups that you can use to put a beer in.
Right.
That they made for us, like 500 or 1,000 of those cups. And I was throwing those. If I wasn't throwing beads, I was throwing those. Those were sort of our version of specialty beads that we had. But I got to give Tiffany, our friend Tiffany Brando, the great producer, makeup artist of the old Brando show, who keeps me in line, handles most of my social media. She did a great job, as you know, with that. And they were all decked out too. Tara and John, who's about my son-in-law in Mississippi, is about to become a full-fledged big-time partner in a firm in Hattiesburg as a guy that can do a real nice job for you in plastic surgery.
There you go.
Real soon.
Well, hey, look, Timmy, look, as an aging dude in television, you couldn't have a better son-in-law, my friend. I'm just saying,
Oh yeah, and I've reminded him, payback is hell. Yes, we expect a good deal.
Yep. When it comes time for the eyelids to get trimmed a little bit, or the chin to get a little, yeah.
Yeah, it's every now and then somebody wants to say something nice. They'll say, "Man, you just haven't changed a bit," and I'm like, well, I appreciate that. Makeup and just for men, but pretty soon it might be more than that.
Yeah. Yep.
So,
we're heading in that direction.
They were able to make it, and we just had such fun. It was just a great time all in all. And as I said, a reminder of how much fun we can have, and really how everybody works hard together as a group to bring something that's in this city that people drive here to be a part of. I mean, I met people on the parade route that were from everywhere. I mean, everywhere. Hot Springs, they came down from there, came over from Monroe, and not just there, from Colorado, from California, from Arizona, people that may or may not have had ties to our area that came in. So there's no question that the economic impact of what they do is felt in our city, to the millions. And I'm really glad that Mayor Arsenault, who I think has done a really good job overall, was able to come to terms with them and get what little controversy they had taken care of. I know there were some issues with some underage drinking, and there were a few arrests made.
I mean, there's always that's always going to happen.
Yeah, that's going to happen anywhere.
Yeah.
That's going to happen anywhere. I think the concern that the mayor's office and the city would have, we don't want any kind of tragedy like they had, a New Year's down in New Orleans. Mm-hmm. We don't want that, and so you want to err on the conservative side there. But it could be, when you think about it, Patrick. The one thing I did hear about that I hope that they take a look at in the future, they used to have some entertainment beyond just the floats, where some marching bands,
right,
taking part in it. And I think the concern was they wanted to be done by 7:00, and they felt like they were up against the clock. It may be something that the city needs to look at in terms of extending that just a little bit. maybe letting it end at 8 or so they can enjoy. I think a lot of times when you get into a parade, I noticed this. My arm was tired. Hell, I thought I had thrown out my rotator cuff at one point. We needed some of those no-throw zones. We did. But to have the bands, stop and play, or maybe someone else perform, like they might in one of the huge parades that we see at Macy's or something like that. I think there's room for that, to involve the high school bands maybe, or a college band here or there, or maybe just a quartet that wants to sing.
I mean, look, Timmy, I'll get I've still got my trombone. It's sitting in my room from 6th grade. I'll break my trombone out and go marching. Let's go.
You know what, I'm interesting you mentioned that. The only parade I was ever part of was one years and years ago that my dad did when he was working in television locally, and I want to say it was at KSLA, so it was just after I was born and before he started putting all of his shows over on Channel 3, after the ownership squabble at KSLA was completed in the late 50s. He did a parade and did it remotely on Texas Street. What the event was, or what the celebration was about, I can't remember exactly, but I was with him on the podium watching him do the parade as a kid. I must have been 4 or 5 years old. And that's the only parade I think I've ever been a part of, or I witnessed, was as a child. And that's as far back as I can remember, watching Dad do stuff on television as a kid growing up. But there's plenty of reason to celebrate. And these folks do as great a job with their parade as any you'll see south of Alexandria. I'm here to tell you. Yeah. They really do.
No, it's Centaur, Gemini, like, Barkus and Meow, all that, like everybody's Highland, I'm glad we have such a festive spirit that goes on here in town. That's fantastic.
Well, when I lived in Baton Rouge and New Orleans, which I did for 7 years, they were doing it down there. So I was around those. I never participated in one because of my schedule with basketball, but I was always around it and saw it. And, I'm telling you that this one is just as good. And the people down there, like I was on WWL with Detillier and the Cajun Cannon last week, they knew all about it. They knew all about it. So they've impressed the people down there who've been doing it, since the beginning of time, so to speak.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Just as long as everyone remembers that it began in Mobile. Oh, wait, nobody cares that it began in Mobile. Yeah, nobody cares that Mardi Gras began in Mobile. New Orleans is the ones who got it right, so nobody cares.
That's right.
Hey, let's talk a little college sports, Timmy B, because obviously, we're back in that realm, and college basketball is getting close to being done. What do you make of obviously you've been calling games all year long, not necessarily in the SEC, but you're as knowledgeable about the sport as anyone. What do you make of what's gone down in the SEC this year? I mean, it is, metrically, like Ken Palm metrics, they have several teams that are setting records in terms of the offensive and defensive efficiency numbers. Look, there's a lot of good basketball being played in a lot of places, but what the SEC is doing this year, frankly, seems to be pretty historic.
No, it is the most historic. That's what it is. Headline, bold print, and underline it like twice. Okay. It is the most historic. And what I find really funny about it is, as you can imagine, how many times we've all been together and I use the term helmet heads in the SEC. It's really killing the helmet heads in the SEC that nationally college basketball is a bigger sport nationally in 2025 than football was. That's killing a lot of helmet heads. They don't like hearing it.
Yeah.
They don't want to. They're embarrassed by it. And they should be reveling in it, but they can't stand it. So I was like, well, we're dominant confidence. I'm like, yeah, you damn sure are in basketball.
Yeah.
And then I just pause and wait for their reaction.
Yeah.
It makes for good. It makes for entertainment.
Here's the thing.
Anyway.
There was a time. A several-year run, and obviously mostly coincided with Nick Saban, where, you would say the SEC dominant college football conference and no questions asked. This year, and really last year as well, a lot of questions asked if you say the SEC was the most dominant conference in football. There is no question about them being dominant in basketball. So, the worms turned a little bit.
Yeah, that's exactly the point. Now, if you're talking about the tradition of football and the tradition of basketball, it's still a no-brainer. Football has far greater tradition. But that isn't to say that basketball hasn't had some tremendous moments in the last two generations, really. When I was emerging down in Baton Rouge covering LSU in the 80s, and Dale had those magical runs in 81 and again in 86, and he really should have been in the Final Four in 87 if they had called a technical on Bobby Knight for slamming the phone down in front of Gene Corrigan. LSU would have been in New Orleans playing in that Final Four in 87. He would have gone back-to-back Final Fours if that had happened. And during that era, it wasn't just Dale that had great teams that were challenging Kentucky. I mean, Georgia went to a Final Four in 83 when Dominic Wilkins left. You had, in addition to that, you had teams from, by example, Mississippi State in 96. That carried from the early 80s, mid-80s, right, all the way through to the mid-90s. Alabama went to 4 straight Sweet 16s under Wimp Sanderson in the 80s, won 4 consecutive SEC tournament titles during that period, got knocked out in the Sweet 16 each time. And then through to the 90s, Mark Godfrey got to the Elite Eight, as you recall, in the early 2000s. But in the 90s, Mississippi State went to the Final Four in 1996. It's like a blip on the radar screen. You rarely, if ever, hear anybody talking about it in the Southeastern Conference. But in that period, that early, say 1979 through 88, the SEC had great players everywhere. Okay, the Ole Miss team that beat Georgia and went to the NCAAs was 15-13 and had 2 NBA players on it.
Yeah.
Okay, Carlos Clark went to the NBA. They had guys that were really great players, and that was in 1980. So it's not as if the SEC hasn't had. In 1986, the year that Dale got that team back from the chicken pox and was an 11 seed, went to the Final Four, beat Kentucky in their 4th try to go to Dallas, Texas that year. There were 3 teams in the Elite Eight that year from the SEC, and Auburn was one of them. And that was the year after, 2 years after Charles Barkley left. They lost to Louisville in 1986 in the Elite Eight in Houston. So it's not like there hasn't been great teams in the past. It just never was recognized, even by fans and media in the South. That's happening now, and I think the reason for it is because of the great coverage that basketball gets, because every game's televised now. They weren't back in those days. You can't turn on a television set at night and not see a quality basketball game being played, no matter what league we're discussing. Look, I think they might get 14 teams in, Patrick. Right now, 13 look to be in. If Arkansas doesn't screw the pooch and drop some games they shouldn't drop in the next 10 days before the SEC tournament, I think Calipari is going to get that team in. I do. So they could get possibly 14 in. The Big Ten's looking at 9, maybe 10. And then the Big 12 probably, 7, 8 maybe. And then we're talking about, 4 for the ACC, 4 for the Big East, and so on down the line. Great basketball is being played everywhere. And as you know me, I love it. I absolutely love it.
As you should. Talking to Tim Brando from Fox Sports as we bebop around, letting him ice his shoulder a little bit after. Were you throwing lefty?
I was.
Okay.
I did go, as Charles Shackelford said when he was coached by Jim Valvano, I did go amphibious a couple of times.
Right.
And and go with the right hand on occasion when people were close by. When you've only got, that's the other thing. Most of those floats, if you looked at them, and while I'm at it, they did a really nice job over at 3 covering the parade. If you happen to see it televised, they did a nice job on that. I want to commend them for it. But there were 20 people throwing beads. Those floats were big, double deckers. Ours was really nice. I couldn't be happier to have had the job they did on our float was wonderful. But there were only 6 of us. It was Terry and me, Tiffany and Russell, and Tara and John, and our lieutenant, David Taylor. That was it. So, I mean, our arms were tired. We were done because you feel this need, Patrick, when you're doing that.
Mm-hmm.
You lock it when you see a kid's face, or you see somebody.
Got to throw him one.
You got to throw them one, and then if they don't get it, you're like, okay, I got to try again.
Yeah.
Okay, I got to try.
Well, you got to be careful though, Timmy, because I don't know if you saw, but Missy Setters, our good friend, that the executive director of the Independence Bowl, they went out for the Centaur parade, and her daughter Ross and her daughter Cody apparently got smoked with one in the face, and had like a cut. Yeah, so the good news is. Based on what my dad has told me about your baseball career, I know you didn't hit anyone in the face hard enough with a throw to hurt them.
No.
I know your arm's not that good. Yeah.
Yeah. When I was sitting in to mop up, I was throwing a 72-mile-an-hour heater and about a 55-mile-an-hour breaking ball, and that's the reason I got to pitch a little bit.
Yeah.
So yeah, mine would never hurt you.
Yeah, I knew you weren't hurting anyone with the bead.
No, but you know what? I'll say this. I know Missy got some stuff from us because Amy O'Callahan, bless her heart, now married to the judge, she got some stuff, and I think got it over to her. So she got her swag from Chateau Brando, as I understand it.
I mean, that's what we all want in life is just some swag from Chateau Brando. Hey,
before we get out of here, I did want to mention this football meeting they're having in Dallas today.
Yes.
If they don't change the seating process for 25, which I think Ross Dellinger just posted something about that, if they don't change the seating process and get away from these automatic buys for conference champions, then they got nothing out of the first sample size year. They got zero out of that if they don't change that. That's something you can change quickly, and it should be. You have to have unanimity to get it changed. And I can't imagine that they won't get it. If they don't, then somebody that's a commissioner of a conference is listening too much to his president.
Well, look, let's be honest, Timmy. Let's be honest. Anybody outside of the autonomous 4, after seeing Boise get a bye and make it into the quarterfinals, they're going to vote against it because that's the only way you're ever going to see Boise getting themselves a bye and a quote-unquote home game, even though they're neutral site. It's never going to happen any other way because they're never going to be voted into the top 4 of the last poll. So I would be shocked at that. What I'm really concerned about, though, and the part that I really am, and I agree with you, by the way, they should just go the true seeds, top 4 get buys, 5 through 8 get the home games, etc. What I am concerned about, though, is this idea that the Big Ten and the SEC are going to try to shoehorn 2, 3, 4 automatic qualifiers in. That's the stuff that I'm really concerned about when it comes, and maybe not this year, but in the future with college football.
Yeah. Well, let me help you on this one here because, as you know, I'm nobody's houseboy, and I certainly don't mind pissing off any of the commissioners because I've done that through my entire career, and I still manage to stay employed, much to the chagrin of some out there. So, but I'm going to say what I see and say what I think. I thought when I said what I did about Sankey not going to a 9-game schedule 3 years ago in those meetings in Destin, and if you recall, Feinbaum defended him. I took him on, and apparently when I did, I pissed off Commissioner Sankey enough that he made sure I would never be on Paul's show again, which is fine. It's not hurt his ratings. It's not hurt his contract renewals or anything like that. So,
Tim, actually, I'm sorry. I've got to let you go. Greg Sankey just texted in and said you're no longer welcome on my show. And he used to work at Northwestern State, so I've got to listen to him.
I hear you. I do. And by the way, it's his network, so if he doesn't want me on it, that's fine. And there may have been a few other reasons, like, some published reports that I was heading there when I didn't
Right.
Years ago. So, who knows? But anyway, on this particular issue, I am all in with Commissioner Sankey and all in with Tony Petitti on taking the leadership role and saying, here's what we need to do. Now, should they force 4 down everybody's throats if they go to 16, or force 3 if they stop at 14? From a public relations standpoint, I'd say no, you shouldn't do that, because the metrics are on your side and you really don't need to do that. You're going to get 3 no matter what.
Right.
When you go to 14. You're going to get them. So why have to put it in print? I'll tell you why they're putting it in print, okay? At the urgency of the presidents who are in their ear saying we better get some protection.
Yeah.
Now, most of that, not all of it, most of that is coming from Big Ten presidents, not SEC presidents, okay? Most of it's coming from Big Ten presidents. But the fact that Sankey and Petitti have to be leaders and take this thing over is not about dominating the other conference. Here's what it's about. It's about making sure the NCAA is out of the business of governing in any way, shape, fashion, or form Division I college football, because they're going to 14 for sure, and they're going to go to 16 eventually if they don't go to 16 right away. Because of what? The unbelievable sums of money lost by the NCAA lawsuit that brought the NCAA down and brought college football into a position of having to pay former players as well as current players going back years and years and years, and inducing revenue sharing into the pot. So now we're not just talking about NIL revenue, we're talking about revenue sharing specifically coming from the college football playoff. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So who's going to pay for that, Patrick? The schools are.
Right.
Well, how do the schools pay for it? They have to pay for it with more inventory. How do you get more inventory? You play more games. You bring more teams into the fray. And if somebody says, well, we don't need more than the top 4 or 5 anyway most years, that's not what this is about. This is about the economic survival of Division I college football, which the NCAA put in peril by their stupid, complete ignorance as it related to amateur versus professional for the last, 2 generations, and particularly the last 15 years when these lawsuits were first born.
Yeah, and by the way, they just went full Pontius Pilate. They just washed their hands of it and said, we're not going to have anything to do with this, and let it run wild.
And that meant that who's got to be in charge here? Well,
somebody.
The people that have the most at stake and the people that swing the biggest sticks. And those sticks and that influence, in my mind, has to start with those 2 conferences. It's got to begin with the Big Ten and the SEC. I would tell my friends that are screaming, oh, my God, how could they be doing this, and are as loud as those that are going nuts on Capitol Hill about Elon Musk emails. I would say the same thing to them. Look, if these guys don't do it, then the sport is going to go belly up, and you are going to have an apocalyptic moment that college football and college athletics in general cannot stand. We have to do it this way. If you are the ACC or if you are the Big 12, and by the way, there's some legitimate talk about the Big East and the ACC joining forces. That's a legitimate conversation that's taking place right now. Those conversations are underway. So keep an eye on that. Just a little caveat to the conversation piece.
Mm-hmm.
But if the Big 12 and the ACC are guaranteed 2, while the SEC and the Big 10 are guaranteed 3, other than that pronouncement, which is from a public relations standpoint, may be difficult to take, it's still good business for both the Big 12 and the ACC to take that deal.
Absolutely.
Because it guarantees that they'll each get 2 teams in. Last year, the Big 12, I did a lot of those games. They were a much better league than the ACC, but they only got 1 team in. This would guarantee that they get 2, and it would guarantee the ACC, which was lucky to get 2. The only reason they did was because of, Clemson beating Miami, knocking them off, and then the incredible second half that SMU had to impress the committee enough to keep Alabama, of all people, out of the playoff. That's the only reason they got 2 in. So now you're securing 2 for every season. And as it relates to the group of 5 and the potential wild card team that could come, that wild card spot or at large spot most years would probably be Notre Dame. If not Notre Dame, it's going to give either the ACC, the Big 12, or the Mountain West, or the AAC, or whatever, Conference USA, whatever
right.
group of 5 league, an extra bid. That's what it's going to do. So the main thing that we have to take from this first year is not the money distribution or the number of bids. It's when the season starts. Patrick, we cannot compete. College football cannot compete with the NFL either in regular season, but for God's sakes, not the wild card playoff weekend and not the divisional weekend. We have to make sure college football ends either on New Year's Day or right around it. Otherwise, they're going to take a hit on ratings, and it's going to be a financial disaster for the worldwide leader or whoever else is involved with the worldwide leader moving forward. That contract for 26, by the way, is still not signed.
Yeah,
it's not. But bottom line is we need to start the season earlier. Screw spring football, have OTAs, have week 0, August the 10th, not August 24th, which is where it was last year. And if somebody says to me again, oh, it's too hot down here to play on, what's the difference in the temperature on August the 10th versus September the 6th down here? I don't want to hear that.
Yeah.
Stop. Let's start the season earlier. College football must end at or around New Year's Day to make the most financially out of its television situation. And college basketball needs to be moved back. That antiquated CBS rule about having the NCAA tournament finish before we go to dusk on Thursday and we see Jack Nicklaus and
right.
Gary Player hit
yeah.
the first ball.
Right.
That is an outdated, antiquated thing. Turner's paying 80% of the rights for this thing. So CBS needs to just, cease and desist and understand that they still want to be involved. It's going to go on. The tournament's going to go on past the Masters. Okay? Just deal with it. And we shouldn't have a basketball game to worry about covering until after Thanksgiving. We should not have a basketball game played until then. And all these Battle of Atlantis and all that other stuff, nobody's caring. Nobody's watching. There's nothing wrong with having the basketball season end a little late. And if that screws up Portsmouth for the NBA, why should they give a damn about the NBA? That league is a financial disaster that no one is watching in record proportion these days.
That's Tim Brando, Fox Sports own. I got a text in from your friend and mine, Dougie. Said, make him college football czar. Let's do it. Like that's, they need somebody in a leadership position around there.
Yeah. By
the way, is not looking out for their own conference like Greg Sankey is. So that would be nice.
Yeah, that's true. I've been critical of Sankey and to some extent Petiti, even though I worked for him. Tony and I are friends. Greg and I used to be. I'd like to, if I saw him, I'd talk to him, but it might be difficult for him, might be awkward for him, but it wouldn't be for me. I can talk to a wall, as you know, but the reality.
Yeah, we just heard it. Right, Timmy, I was out of the room for most of this interview. Like I just went out and got some lunch,
But I do think that we can fix these things if they start thinking about the totality of the sport. And I do think in this case, from a financial standpoint, particularly, both Sankey and Petiti are trying to do the right thing.
Yeah.
I really believe that.
Yeah.
And you've got to trust them to pull this off because they're the two guys that pull the most weight. This separate contract they're talking about, it's a separate television contract between the Big Ten and the SEC that would give some home games to both leagues, all right, with the SEC games that are on Fox being played in Big Ten stadiums and the Big Ten games that are on SEC stadiums going to ESPN.
Yeah.
Which, of course, they for the first time are having to deal with life without the Big Ten. So it can be a win-win for everybody here. I mean, it really can. And they don't need to be in a position of having to sublease some of this playoff to Turner just because Turner's desperate to have anything on so they can continue to charge money for people that get their cable system because they just lost the NBA. That's why you're seeing all these, games popping on Turner that are nondescript Mountain West games. They're trying to get anything on they possibly can because they lost the NBA. And ESPN taking advantage of that, knowing they were going to lose money on these games going up against the NFL, subleased their games. And Turner didn't even care that they put their own talent on. They put ESPN talent on Turner for those quarterfinal games. A lot of people didn't find them. Those games played at Penn State
right.
and at Texas. A lot of people, the ratings were awful for those games.
Yeah.
And as you know, the ratings weren't very good either for the championship, or not what they projected. And that's because people disengage once the NFL gets rolling, And the daytime talk shows aren't going to talk about them during the NFL playoffs. First take, first this, get off my whatever, the facility, name your show on FS1 or ESPN. They're not talking college football when the NFL playoffs are underway. They're not.
I can tell you one show that is, the Patrick Netherton Show. All right, Timmy,
there
Hambone's about to strangle me because we're so over our break time.
You're being punched out.
Yeah. Oh no, he's giving me the hook like I'm at whatever that show was they used to have.
Rogers, your chair here at Chateau Brando, it still has your name on it. It's unchanged from before we went on television years ago.
He's taking his shoes off as we speak to be able to come inside and join you, Timmy. Always a pleasure, my friend. Glad you didn't hurt anyone on the floats, and we'll catch up soon, brother.
Yeah, if I see a red truck out front, he's stalking me.
Yep. See you, Timmy. That was Tim Brando, Fox Sports Own.